Yeah, thank you so much, Bryce, for being here today. I really, really appreciate this. Thank you so much. I am so excited to get into the book, get talk about the collaboration. But before we dive into that, we want to know about you, the artist. So can you please introduce yourself, your artistic journey, and your background for the audience?
Sure. My name is Bryce Kho. I am a concept artist and illustrator. I primarily work for Sabotage Studio. The game that we just did that we have this big book for is Sea of Stars, which I'm very excited that it's doing really well. Um, my role for that was pretty much being doing all of the concept art, which primarily was character, just because as an old school RPG, it's got like hundreds of characters. So that was really fun for me. And I feel like I really learned a lot because of that. And as far as my artistic journey goes, I actually am one of those people who never thought they would get to be an artist. I have that
Mhm.
background where my parents were like, that's like the last thing you should do. So I have a winding journey. I'm not sure how far you want to get into it or how far back.
As
Um,
far as you want to go, take your time.
the like the short of it is I had like two full-fledged careers doing other things before I was like, you know what, I'm burnt out. I need a break. So after I finished a pretty big project, I said I'm gonna take 3 months off. I'm just gonna like relax. I'm gonna draw for myself again for the first time since like my early 20s. Like I took a long pause during my 20s in which I was not drawing for myself, only if I ever needed to for a project. But that wasn't my main role. It'd just be like, oh, like for film, I might do storyboards, or for the games that I worked on, I might do sprite artwork. But I wasn't drawing things to creatively fulfill myself. So after such a long period of time of not doing it, when I was finally 28, I decided like, okay, I'm going to draw for myself. And that period of time is like where all of a sudden like I felt like, oh, people want to pay me to do this. uh, this is so much easier than the other stuff I was doing. I am going to do this instead and just see how far I can go. And in the beginning, it was pretty modest, I would say. But then I just kept going, and I feel like it's been a really fun journey to like keep growing and feel like I get to do the thing that I thought was just a privilege and just a hobby. And so that's led me in this direction where became somewhat known through social media and got hired by companies that I I'm happy to work with now. Um, but yeah, all the stuff before, I feel like all that prelude thing, all those things actually all come into play, and I can talk about that more if you like. But it's like nothing was wasted, and it's just a little bit like it all kind of informed what I do and what kind of style I have, and I feel like at the end of the day, having that unique point of view is what makes it interesting, you know.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I find it like, most artists tend to have like very similar backstories. It's like either
Hmm.
you're like, yeah, I know I'm gonna be an artist right off the bat, or like you didn't even like consider art because it was like so far off a reach, and you're like, yeah, this
Yeah,
isn't a thing. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden you have that eureka moment, like, wait, what? I can really do this. And
yeah,
I also like loved when you said, um, basically everyone's story is unique, and it's that uniqueness that makes your work unique, and it's like it's your story that makes your work unique, and it's until you realize that I want to do this for myself, from
hmm,
within, that
yeah.
your true self is actually gonna show through your art and gonna like reach other people, if you know what I mean. And I think that's very interesting as well. It's funny how we all like forget the simplest things, like just do
Yeah.
what you want, like be
Right, right,
yourself.
right.
It's like so easy, but yeah, we forget it. So like.
I feel like everyone's entire like youth is about doing things you don't want to do. You know what I mean? Like studying, being good at school. Like it's like I don't want to study this, and then it's like the reason that it's useful is like that you learn how to do something hard, right? Like that's the only reason why
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
forced to do school. But then you have the expectation that it has to be hard to be worth doing later. Also, I think that often translates to you have your like natural passion, and you're like that's too easy. I gotta like maybe take that and do something that's a little uncomfortable with it, which doesn't in theory doesn't sound like a bad idea, but it's often it can often lead you into a hole in which you're actually not doing what you're good at or what you like doing, and that's
Yeah.
that's the
And then you
problem.
start to hate it, and it's like, why do I hate this thing that you intentionally made difficult for yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a very fascinating. I don't know, like, why do we do this? But yeah, it's so interesting to hear.
I
I
mean,
definitely
it's
love
an
talking about
ambition
that.
thing. Yeah, I think we just want to push ourselves if and we want to achieve and we want all those like accolades and things like that. And a lot of those things come from pushing yourself outside of comfort zone. And so you sometimes neglect the thing that actually brings you joy and that you might actually be better at.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah.
then the moment you realize, like, okay, I don't need to take it all that seriously, that's when, and you treat yourself, that's when, like, you actually start,
Mm,
loving it again. And you start actually making a lot of progress, and you realize that, like, oh, this is not meant to be as hard as I want to. I know you make your
uh,
progress, and a lot more comes out from it. So definitely.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I want to like trail back to your journey again, and I wanted to
Hmm.
ask you about like your early inspirations because I want to know what you said art wasn't something you thought you would like it
Hmm.
was going to be your career, but definitely you kept drawing, right? I wanted to know what kept pulling you towards art, even though you felt like, oh, okay, what were the inspirations? What were your early inspirations?
Sure. So my early in order it would be
Mhm.
X-Men, Ninja Turtles, Sonic, Dragon Ball, and then it gets into Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid, and then there's the anime period in which it becomes Evangelion, Cowboy Bebop, as like more pivotal. Um, and then actually, I think after high school, after I get into college, there's kind of a lull in which I'm just consuming the things, right, but not like having the ambition to
Mhm.
really become a creator at that in that direction at least. Um, and instead, it's not until I see Kim Jung Gi's work that I really become inspired by the ability to just draw exactly what you're imagining. The kind of freedom of creativity when you have that much control over the process. And so for me, what kept me doing it after I had that period of time was actually I would do figure drawing every week as kind of like a more relaxation thing from my other jobs. So when I used to work on film, and then I used to work as a indie game developer. And so during that time, um, there was like a free figure drawing class every week. And so I would go, and my entire purpose for a long time was just to relax and just to like kind of focus on drawing exactly what I was seeing. Just kind of zoning out and to be like, I'm just a rendering machine and this is relaxing. And I would see other
Yeah.
people at the class who would be doing more creative things with their figure drawing. Like they might push the story or enhance the pose or add more emotion into it. And I was like, no, for me, this is just a safe space to just
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
focus on this raw skill. And it was fun to like kind of like gradually see that understanding coming in. And that's where the Kim Jung Gi bit comes in. I was like, oh, like he's able to look at something and but see it from every direction in which he could draw the perspective crazy or whatever. And so I started to say to myself, like, I want to have that understanding of what I'm drawing. So instead of just focusing on translating what I was seeing onto the page, I started to shift to be like, well, I'm sitting here, but what if I was sitting here, or up here? Or if I wanted to adjust their pose, I have to like think about like what are the volumes that are there that I can manipulate and play with. And so chasing chasing that ability to draw what was in my imagination, and understand what I was seeing so that I could do that later became like just a fun side goal because no one cared what I was drawing because I wasn't doing it professionally. It was just for myself. And so um, that was I think that was probably what would be for other people their art school was my art school was just showing up
Yeah.
all the time to just
Yeah.
just do that and enjoy it as a hobby, that uh, I guess kept my skill level increasing throughout that period of time in which art was just a hobby. Yeah.
Definitely. And the more you realize when you get better, the thirst to improve continues to grow. And it's like before you know you're in this, like you started this like race that you didn't even realize, like, I want to get better, I want to get better, I want to get better, I want more
Yeah.
knowledge. And like
Yeah.
the better you get, the more you enjoy it, and the more it becomes meaningful to you. I definitely agree.
Yeah, I thought of this analogy recently, and it makes so much sense to me. And I know it's not even that complicated or anything, but it's the idea of like drawing being similar to working out at the gym. And so it's often not about like doing a really singular intense workout or going to the gym like once a month and being like pushing yourself till you crack. It's more just like showing up every day and putting in the time to make it happen. And then the other thing being like I know a lot of artists who draw all the time, but if you show up every day to the gym but you also only use 5 pound weights, you're not gonna
Gonna be
really
flat
improve.
tires.
Yeah. So like that there's like that mentality that we were talking earlier about like pushing yourself. Like I would I would go to the gym and then I would like try to tack on more weight every time, but not in a like burn myself out way, which I think is the other danger. It was more so like
Yeah.
I just want to I do want to see if I can push it a little harder and understand a little more. And so I think for me that's the thing that a lot of artists plateau at, and the thing that I'm most like, no, I'm gonna continue to see how far I can go. Not saying
Yeah.
I'm not even feel I don't even feel like I'm that great, to be honest. I'm just someone who keeps showing up, and I guess
Yeah.
it's
I
working.
know it is. I think
Yeah,
you just have to have a good balance of like, I'm doing this because I want to do it and I'm not gonna burn myself out doing it, right? That's
yeah,
all you have to know. Balance is
yeah,
it. But yeah,
yeah.
definitely. So thank you so much for sharing about your background, your inspirations. I love knowing more about the artist.
Hmm.
But now, like you mentioned, you work at a company and you for your game Sea of Stars. And I want you to take your time to like introduce the game for maybe those who are not familiar with this game. Maybe someone's watching this YouTube video like, I should have not heard about that game before. What's it about? Just take your time to tell us a bit about the game and just share that with us.
Sure. So Sea of Stars is a classic RPG, in the spirit of the games that came out in the 90s on Super Nintendo and yeah, actually just Super Nintendo. So if you have heard of Final Fantasy like 3 through 6, or Chrono Trigger, or Super Mario RPG, if you had any love for those games, the people who made Sea of Stars, like that was their jam, myself included.
Yeah.
um, and so it's in that style. It's retro. It's a pixel art game. It's classic turn-based action, but the twist on it, and the thing that I think is really quite, I guess, unique about the experience, is how smart the designers have been with modernizing certain conventions. And so you get the feeling of those classic nostalgic RPGs, but it's a smoother and more fun and more just um, I don't know how else to say it other than kind of just beautiful experience, because it's very smooth. It's just like someone who
Mm,
really loved what those games were about and understood what made them special, and then try to put them in a package that's more
mm.
consumable now. And so
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah, and so art wise, it's very similar to those classic RPGs as well, because that's my influences, where that comes from. Um, so think kind of classic fairy tale adventure, dragons, swords, but there's some twists in there.
Love it.
Yeah. So um, I mean, I think my the most fun thing I did while making it was all the creature designs and monsters. Half of them I made as jokes because I thought it would be funny, but I feel like me having fun while making them is what like got everybody like interested in those designs in particular. They're just like, oh, this is so much fun.
Yeah.
And so I think in the end, the only super unique thing about the game is just how much passion the developers poured into it. If I'm being honest, it's just like people who really loved what they were doing, and that's what makes it special.
Beautiful, beautiful. I wanted to also ask, what's it like working, on this game? What's the like what you can share, obviously, like maybe the behind the scenes, the process, the how
Hmm.
like just share a little bit about that.
Sure. So not trying to plug the book, but the cool thing about the
We're gonna
book.
plug the book very soon.
Yeah.
It's coming.
But so for me, I work in Los Angeles, in Pasadena specifically, and the rest of the studio is in Quebec, Canada. And so,
Oh, that's where I am.
oh, really? That's great.
Really?
Yeah, well, they're just in town. And so for me, I actually just have really one main contact, which is the game director theory. And so the back and forth is, for me specifically, is he would give me a long list of assets along with descriptions of what each character does and kind of a beat sheet of what the overall story is. And so that would look like, oh, in Act Three, we're gonna come into this jungle area, and we need the monsters to be, some sort of forest or grass theme. And can you make some options for a melee and a ranged character? And then specifically, we'll need like one character that needs to have some attribute. And so it's super wide open. Theory increasingly became more and more vague with his descriptions for me, because he would be like, "I'm excited to see what you do with the idea of a giant boss that needs to fill this role in the story, but otherwise you can do whatever you want." And so I sometimes I'd be like, "That's super challenging." So the only thing I can think of is like, okay, you want it to be like fire themed. What can I think of that's fire themed, and what would be ridiculous to combine with it, right? So like maybe the character is a volcano, and it's a frog volcano. So he's got a frog. He's a volcano with a or he's a toad with a frog. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. He's a toad with a volcano on his back. Yeah, yeah, and so I just like just trying to push it to be ridiculous and to see if sometimes almost like I wonder if I can sneak this in, like if like, he will say yes to this stupid idea. And so for me, it was like the more fun I was having, the more I could tell he liked it. We just happened to be very in sync. So for me, it was often just playing and making sure that I was having fun so that he would enjoy it, because then I would have to do less work, right? Because if he doesn't ask for any revisions, or if he doesn't need more options, then that was my goal. So finding out what wavelength he was on and what he was looking for was kind of the main day to day. But he would give me that list. I would give him options. I would turn in work once a week, and then just like type up a bunch of descriptions of what I was thinking and how I imagined these things to work. And then he would pick something, and then we would rinse and repeat every week. And so the book is like literally all of those chats that we had. All the relevant bits are in the book, just next to the assets. So I think it's cool because people can like literally see what our back and forth was. The only things that were taken out were just like, do you think it'll be due like next week? Oh, I don't know. Are you busy? Those mundane things were taken out, but any of the interesting things I put in, because it was like, yeah, then I don't have to type anything new. I just like copy and paste. So yeah.
I actually absolutely love that, because video games, concept art, animation, books is like, I think it's so popular because people always, like, I know growing up,
Mhm.
the industry felt so distant for me, but it wasn't
Mhm.
until like I got my first art book I was able to see that this is people actually work on this. Like there's something
Mhm.
that goes on behind this, like a whole different world that I'm not familiar with, and I love. That's why I love looking at like concept art books in general. So I'm like I said, it's so exciting when you see, especially a game that, as you mentioned, you're all just having fun. It's like a group of like-minded people who grew up with the same type of like inspirations and like
Mhm.
interests, just coming together to work on a project that they're so passionate about. And like now they're just sharing to the world the behind the scenes of that. And there's no way like no one's gonna feel that. Like even if you're not
Mhm.
interested in this, you're gonna feel the passion. You're gonna just feel the energy. And I think that
Yeah.
that's what I love about art. Sometimes you don't even have to be like familiar or like involved to feel the passion and the energy. And I definitely know like there's a lot of passion that was put into not only the game, of course, the project, but like even the book and everything related to the project itself. So yeah, now we can smoothly transition into the book. Can you've already given us a hint, but maybe can you share more about like the book? Like what can we can expect? Like concept art, just tell us a bit more about the book in general.
Sure. So the book is something that I was working on the artwork for Sea of Stars for more than 4 years, probably like 4.5 years by the time I started like compiling the book together. And so for me, as a body of work, uh, it's huge. It's like 270 something pages, I think. Um, and it's not a lot of like double spread, repeat stuff. Honestly, I had to cram so many things and make them smaller just because I just made so much stuff for this book.
Wow,
Um,
wow, that's amazing.
it's so much content. As far like when I look at it, it's different because I'm the artist and I'm like, yeah, it's that one's good or whatever, you know. But like as far as the amount of value that someone else might see in just the process and seeing it, all of the artwork that I made, like
Exactly.
there's so much. I have a lot of books that I really loved growing up too, concept art books, and just the amount of unused character designs or turnarounds or action sheets that I did for this game, I think was kind of unnecessary. There's just like so much. But I think it was cool. And I do think in a way, not to pat myself on the back too much, but in a way like what made the game and what makes the game so special is just how much love is poured into it, you know, as we said. And a lot of that comes down to the animation and visuals. And so the animators, like just having that back and forth with them that I had by making these ridiculous attacks that were kind of over the top, and then seeing them actually execute them like so beautifully and smoothly. That was one of the things that kind of kept me most excited every week because I could, even though I wasn't like directly talking to them about making things, I would see the Slack chat where they're just posting their work in progress of stuff, and so they would turn in things that was like, oh my god, like you totally understood what I was thinking when I drew these like few sketches, and some of the time they go like way overboard even what I was imagining. So that was really fun. And you know, my role in it is I think I helped inspire some of the things that they did. So like what I felt like is, even though the game is sprite art and so like the really tiny assets, right? I think the personality that I put into my action drawings where they're, you know, performing some sort of attack or whatever it might be, I feel like they felt that and they conveyed it in their animation as well. And so for people who want a window into what the process of making the game was like, I feel like it's kind of cool to see the reverse, you know, where you've seen the sprites or you played the game. And then so like, if you can see in my drawings, like what I was originally feeling and trying to draw or convey, like, I think that's really special. And there's just so much of it, like I said. And so, yeah, just getting to see that entire process, I think is cool. But the other part for me as an artist that I think is fun is just seeing the evolution of some designs. So there's so many concept art books where I feel like you see the character and then you see like them in different poses, but you don't get as many of the like, you know, unused previous
Blue sky
de-evolutions. Yeah,
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 yeah, the steps before the final, I guess.
right. Yeah, and so I think that back and forth thought process of like, okay, we need this character to fill these, you know, X, Y, and Z, but you know, Theory wasn't filling one of them, and so like it kind of like branches off like a tree. I just think that if you like this kind of artwork, so many of the unused character designs I really like, and I can see why he didn't choose them because they're like sometimes just too silly. But I feel like it's really revealing of the artistic process and journey that we went through together to see all of that together, like just put together so nicely. So that's personally what I really like about the book too. Still. Otherwise, it just has all of the illustrations that I did, which is kind of something that I'm more known for as well. I break down the process for each illustration. All the thumbnails, I think, is similarly a thing I really like, because anytime I would do an illustration, I would give Theory at least 4 options. And I'd be like, okay, here's like some thumbnails roughly of ideas. My personal point of view is I never wanted to give him an option or a thumbnail that I wouldn't be super happy to work on. And so in a way, I kind of have to be like, here's the 4 thumbnails. I have no bias on which one he picks. Like that's the level of like commitment I want to any option I presented. And so he would pick ones that I was obviously happy to move forward with. But I think for people who are consuming the book, seeing all those other options and seeing the thought process on like why we chose one or why there were certain strengths in or weaknesses in different thumbnails. I think that's revealing about like what it's like to make a game or sell a game or think about how to communicate what our message was. So I think that those are really fun too. Yeah. Sorry, I'm definitely rambling. You can.
No, no, that's the point. That's the point. It's definitely very valuable, especially to artists who want to, you know, do something similar, be it concept art, animation, games, whatever it may be, or just people who are curious to see work. And I love that you said it's jam packed with artwork because sometimes it can be icky for me when well, not really icky, that's a strong word, but like, you know, some companies might want to make it seem like, oh no, this was a smooth process. It's not, we don't, you know, just, you know, it's, we don't want to show the ugly stuff, but like that's the stuff I want to see. I want to see everything. I want to see the early progressions. I don't care how crazy it was. I want to know how you got from here to there. I want to see the designs and why you made that decision. So that kind of stuff excites me, and I'm sure a lot of artists can relate to this. And I think that was definitely going to make the book a lot more valuable as well. But I was also curious. One of the questions I wanted to ask is how this collaboration in general came to be, because this is a book in partnership with 3D Total. Can you share a bit about like the collaboration? Like how did the idea come to be? What was that process like?
Sure. Wait, so specifically with 3D Total or with Sabotage, actually?
Everything, just the whole anything. Just take your
Okay, cool, cool. So I kind of to it earlier, but I started drawing on like social media after I took that long break from a previous project, and I got discovered by someone working at someone from Devolver, and then they asked me to do key art illustrations for them, and that's what connected me to Sabotage Studio. And Sabotage liked the work I did for them so much, they hired me several times. I think like three more times after that initial key art I did for them, before they're like, okay, we're gonna have another game coming up soon called Sea of Stars, and we want you to also make another key art for that. So, you know, the big like box art illustration. And so from there, it was kind of history with just like continuing that collaboration. That's what the book is. And then after I was done with all of the assets they needed for the base game, they were like, you can kind of take a break or work on the next thing. Like we have this kind of lull in the schedule. And so I said, oh, well, I can put the book together myself then, instead of like handing off all the assets to someone else, because they had no experience in book publishing or making a book. And I actually had made my own book for the previous game that I worked on, which was called Aegis Defenders. And so I was like, oh, I can do it for you guys. And I have all the assets. It's all kind of a mess. And I had a internal idea of like, it would take forever to write all the text for every single character design, because I told you there's too many. So I was like, I think it would be cooler if it was just the real text that was our back and forth. Then I don't have to write anything. Then people are cool if there's like grammar errors and stuff, because that's just how you talk in a chat, you know, like it's just casual. And so I threw it together. I think that whole process, I was on and off doing a bunch of other things, but I think it was about 6 months to compile all 270 pages. And my MO when making it was literally just kind of like to document. Like I wasn't really, I was just trying to get all the assets onto pages. And so after I was finished, we started to shop around the book to be like, oh, there's several video game book publishers that like want to work with us. But I had recently signed my own book deal with 3D Total just for my own personal artwork. And so after talking to some of these other video game book publishers, I was like, I don't know if the vibe is exactly as comfortable for me. Because I had met Simon from 3D Total already, and I was like, I'm just gonna ask him for recommendations on video game books. I don't know if like you guys would do that, like do a video game book, but I'll just ask him for recommendations. And he was like, no, we'll publish it. Yeah.
Let's give it to us. Why are you
Yeah.
looking for someone else?
Yeah. My recommendation is us. So I was like, okay, cool. That's just easier. I feel like I work well with you guys. Everyone on your team is super nice, and very well respected too. And so I felt like the project would be similarly respected as a entity. And so that's kind of how our collaboration started. And because I designed like all the content myself, really the things that 3D Total had to handle was like some formatting issues, as well as adding some header pages for the sections, and the forward and the thank you at the end. But mostly, I kind of just like here it is, it's done. Yeah.
That's very cool. Like I think it's like when you mentioned like how it's mainly like the text from your conversation and the behind the scenes. That feels so like authentic to me. It feels so raw. It's like you're kind of it's like a you're how do I put this? It's like you're reading or you're there like a third person like in this
Hmm.
process who kind of doesn't have a say in it, but like you're like just like in your head you have a say, but yeah, it's like but you're kind of like seeing the ebbs and flows in like the conversation. I think that's really cool. We've talked about like the book, what you can expect from the book, how the book came to be. I want to know your personal favorite part of. Okay, so I want to know two things: your favorite
Hmm.
chapter, or in general, your favorite part or thing in the book or about the
Hmm.
book, and your favorite
Hmm.
part of working on the book itself. So those two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So you actually kind of said something that made me think about my favorite thing about the book, which is as I was making any given character, I would often show it to my wife or my friends and be like, so he asked me to make, this ice enemy. Here are the like 5 to 6 options or whatever it was that I made. Which one would you pick? Like I would get to
Mm.
ask them that before Theory actually chose, or sometimes I would ask them after, but like often it was just kind of fun to to have people's imaginations kind of run wild with just like a singular pose of a character that is could exist. And so that was my favorite part of working on the artwork for the book, and then like being able to like kind of put that in front of people to get them to experience something similar, because I would like label them like 1, 2, 3, 4, like which one do you like.
Which one do you like? Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
And so what was fun for me was like my wife Lai was really good at deciding which one Theory would pick. Like without telling Theory ahead of time what her favorite was, she'd be like, I think she sometimes would say exactly like, I like this one the most. I think Theory is gonna go with this one. And then she would like rationale. She'd be like, I think this one's more fun and more wacky and more creative or original. But I think he's gonna want it to like fill this sort of like nostalgic vibe or like known quantity kind of like trope, but that has a twist enough that people will understand it and like it too. So that back and forth was really fun for me, and I think you kind of get a little bit of it when you see the book by yourself and you're reading it, and you're like, oh, I kind of like number 2 instead of number 3. um, there's a handful of designs in the book too that I did as jokes for my friends while I was like drawing with them at a cafe. So I'd be working on a character design, and I'd be like, I'm gonna turn that barista into a character right now, and I'm gonna make it an option for Theory, or I'm gonna like I drew a couple of my friends as character designs as well, and I mentioned it in the book too because I told Theory, and so it was fun when he picked those ones, just because he thought they were the coolest. And that's another like kind of favorite detail of mine is just how, I guess, just how personal it is. It's like, as we've said before, with me having fun, the things that I was having fun with, I often talk about in the book and mention like, oh yeah, I just decided to take this weekend experience and have that inspire the assets I drew this week. And so I guess, yeah, it's just how personal and how many silly anecdotes are in it. Um, that's what I like most about the book. And as far as making it and putting it together, um, well, I did think it was really cool to put the sprite artwork of each character as how they appear in the game in the corner of each page. So it's almost like you get the exact like funnel of like, here's all the work that went into making, this pixel character. And
Yeah.
and it's a cool like fun factor of seeing that, but it's also I think really um, a fun way to showcase as well like the sprite artists and how they interpreted what I did. The thing that it doesn't have is the animation, and I had a thought of like, oh, what if I animate a sprite so it's like a flip book on the corner? But I was like, it's not worth it. It's better to have.
That would be cool
Yeah,
though.
it would be cool, but it'd be like such a short one character animation. So yeah.
Definitely. Everything, like you said, sounds so interesting. And once again, so much passion, so much energy put into a book. It's I love to see it. I love art books and I love seeing artists be passionate about making art book and sharing their art to the world. So definitely love that. And yeah, lastly, before we finalize, I wanted to ask, in general, like what advice, because we're on the topic of it, like times are difficult for a lot of artists, video game
Hmm.
devs,
Yeah.
creatives in general.
Yeah.
So right now, what general advice would you give to aspiring artists, developers, creatives who want to do something and that want to do their own project, but
Um, I've always felt privileged to be in a position where I didn't have a lot of pressure on myself to succeed at artwork um, during the period of time in which I actually probably got good enough to do it professionally. And so I feel like that's the real danger of trying to make it as an artist is always feeling like your work needs to impress, perform somehow, or get you accomplish something, you know. Um, and just from my own experience, the work that I do when it's because I'm excited about expressing an idea, I'm excited about sharing it with someone, and like humor is a big part of my work, I suppose, but like sharing it with someone and getting a emotional reaction from it, like when I have that in mind, the work is always 10 times better. It might not even actually technically be better. It might be drawn more poorly. It might be not colored as nicely. But when I have that emotional connection to what I'm doing, um, it it can actually communicate and it can actually have value to somebody else. Anytime I'm drawing something to impress or to like get a job, those frankly, as counterintuitive as that unfortunately is, it never works as well. Because it's not authentic. It's someone saying, "Look at me," as opposed to doing something that is worth looking at.
yeah,
Yeah, and so if you are an aspiring artist, like remembering to um, draw the things that you're actually excited about and passionate about, and having that be the thing that's guiding you, as opposed to the desire to have your artwork get you things. Um, it's so hard to do, and I'm not saying I'm a master at it, but like knowing that that is the path with which you will have the most actual success is really a great way to make your life a lot easier and a lot more successful at the same time. So that would be my advice.
definitely. I love that advice. Thank you so much for sharing it. We really do need to remind ourselves that at the end of the day, we're living life for live life for yourself. Do things you love because you love them and not because you're seeking validation from the internet. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.